Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Hope all is well. My name is Henrik Bick. I'm here with the communications team at the Music Business Association. Glad to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we get things started, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes. In order to connect with your fellow attendees during the session, be sure to change your Zoom chat settings to everyone. That'll allow you to network with one another. And we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar today. For any questions for our presenters, feel free to use the Q&A button on your Zoom dashboard, and that'll be the best way to reach our presenters. Our last webinar of the spring series will be taking place Thursday, May 4th. It's 2 weeks from today. It'll be hosted by Vistex. Be sure to visit musicbiz.org and watch our socials at musicbizassoc for more information on that session. If you can believe it, we are just under a month from the launch of MusicBiz 2023 over at the JW Marriott in Nashville, May 15th to the 18th. Thus far, we've confirmed 2 of our 3 keynotes. Tuesday evening, we'll hear from Cobalt Chairman and CEO Willard Ardritz. And on Thursday morning, we'll hear from indie artist Lou Kana, Jillian Rutston of Prescription Songs and Amigo Records, and Tracy Gardner of TikTok. Again, there's details for our 3rd keynote coming out shortly. Be sure to visit musicbiz.org, musicbiz2023.com, or to visit us again at socials at musicbizassoc for more information on that. Also announced at this point, we last week announced our newest award, the Impact Award for Technological Excellence. That'll be given to Sound Exchange for the first time at our Busy Awards, taking place the evening of Wednesday, May 17th. As I said, there's more to come on the announcements, if you can believe it, for MusicBiz 2023. So be sure to keep peeled for that, also through your emails. But now let's go to today's session. In order to kick things off, let's hear from Edward Guinness over at OpenPlay. Edward, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. And it's really great to connect with everybody before the event next month. I'm Edward Guinness. I'm one of the co-founders of OpenPlay. We are a solution that helps labels, publishers, distributors focus on managing their asset catalogs, their rights management, and delivery for the first time into the market. And the goal for us is to continue to evolve the space, specifically to help independent labels and even those larger to focus on what matters, which is the actual music and the fans, and let us do some of the heavy lifting in our space. With me today, I have Bill Wilson, who will be chatting with me about some of the more relevant topics in our space.
Sorry. Hi, I just need to get on the video.
Okay, sounds great.
I'm not allowed. There we go.
There we go. Hey, Bill.
It was weird talking to my avatar, right?
Yeah, so Bill Wilson, I've known for a long time. In fact, OpenPlay launched officially in March of 2013. And then we went to our first Music Biz at the time, where Bill Wilson was kind of the only one that welcomed us with open arms. Bill has been a immense sounding board for us as we've grown, and I know he's done the same with a lot of other startups in the space who focus on metadata and some of its challenges. So Bill, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, when I worked for MusicBiz for a number of years and created the Metadata Summit, and it was a great time because initially there was no real glue holding this community together. And over the course of these many years, it's turned to who'd have thought that it would be a thing, and now it's turned into a thing. And a lot of individuals are really excited about what still happens at the Metadata Summit. And because it's the topic is such a backbone of commerce and really how the industry runs, it pleases me to see how much this community has applied itself, and also a little daunting because when we look at some of the questions that we're asking right now, some of them are still kind of the same that we were asking back then, right? So,
yeah, there and back again. It feels like every topic that was relevant 10 years ago, and maybe that's the length of time in our industry for things to really hit home. Maybe 10 years is the right timeline.
I mean, you know, when the work groups first got started, in 2009, right when I had started at Music Biz, and then over the next couple of years, it was like the digital group or whatever we were, and we were kind of talking about it and, you know, creating our relationships with the fine folks over at DDEX. We were just, you know, talking about metadata and what it means, and you know, with what we were trying to promulgate first was just the implementation of DDEX across the board, because there were still a great many DSPs emerging who were not using any consistent or reasonably consistent standard. And I think now we've hit a place where, on a positive note, you know, DDEX ERN, the electronic release notification that, you know, virtually every company uses now, is at least a starting block, if not the complete set of the being of data that's the baseline for the business. So ERN can be delivered to virtually every DSP except for maybe one or two, you know, right now, and that's a great thing. And without all those conversations, those tough conversations happening back then that you were a part of very early on, you know, what we have now wouldn't even be in place. But that doesn't mean that the fight for ERN is over, and consistency across implementations, because that was always a thing. And it doesn't mean that the fight for better metadata across the board is. So I know that you've seen kind of the evolution of the business. You've seen where we were and where we are. And I think you have some things to say about, you know, what are we still looking at? What are the things we think we've solved, and what are the things that we need to solve?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an evolution, right? And the transformation in our industry is an ongoing effort, and there's a lot of groundswell that you helped form in the, you know, prominent period of DDEX and its growth. But what we're still fighting for is more normalization of data, more interoperability of data. DDEX is not an easy format. I mean, you have had the pleasure, since you've helped bring all this to light, to actually implement and utilize DDEX in your day-to-day life, and you've fought some of those complexities with us. Again, DDEX it's like any language. Everyone has a slight different interpretation of it. Everyone has a different implementation of how they apply DDEX to their business. And you know, we're not at a place where it's one message to rule them all yet, right? It's still a lot of the DDEX we deal with and a lot of our colleagues deal with, it's still very bespoke. It's still specific to a certain distributor, specific to certain DSPs. There's a lot of complexity to getting the standard right in the first place. And it's, you know, spawned quite a cottage industry of consultants and firms that are helping DDEX you know, get implemented correctly. Whether that was the original mission, you know, I wasn't involved at the early days, but I do believe that there's still quite a bit of evolution we still need to make a standard like DDEX a lot easier to implement, a lot easier to digest. You know, the statement I always use is, you know, a 22-year-old, you know, computer science graduate should be able to step in a hackathon of any kind and start implementing something against the standard. I don't think we're there yet with that complexity.
So other things that you think require fixing, and sort of the priority around that in the business. You know, from my perspective, I'll throw out one thing. You know, we've talked for years about credits, album credits, and that has yet to see potentially, you know, reach its full potential in the music market. Other contextual metadata surrounding records as well, that is stuff that could help with discovery, right? So we have, like, for example, those two things, but what are some of the other underlying things that you think require kind of, taking a second look at from, the larger picture?
Well, look, I'm a really big fan of ancillary contextual metadata, when it comes to artist bios and anything related to information that a rights holder or a label has that could be valuable to the DSPs, valuable to retailers to bring to their consumers. That's all critical information, and the people who are the most apt to provide it are those who are the closest to the relationships with the music itself. We're still in early days of being able to communicate all this new contextual information, whether it's tagging, programmatic or otherwise, whether it's bios and approved photos and images. All of those things are relevant and I think necessary. But what we're seeing is a lot of companies forming around the excitement of being able to help bring this to light, but there's really no there yet for most of this data. There's still a lot of DSPs that are not taking contextual data. Oftentimes, it's either they're not ready for it or they're taking their own stab at it. Right? They may want to have their own tags that they apply as opposed to be given tags by the rights holder. And what all this is doing is it's adding further complexity to whether or not a label or a publisher should invest the time and money to overhaul their catalog and update this information. So that it's available someday that it's going to be needed. But what we've seen in our industry is very little happens unless there's monetization in the near field, meaning that there is some DSP, some retailer, some partner that is anxious to want this data in order for a label to actually want to do it. You have to go to your CFO, Bill, and ask for a budget every time you have a cleaning up exercise or a tagging exercise. You have to justify that somehow to these groups.
Right, and at various companies, obviously the revenue is what's important. The earnings are what's important. So things that are going to be implemented and potentially increase competitiveness or increase sales at a DSP within the near to midterm are the things that get the attention. And if you look at the way various things are implemented today, you can see that there's been a terrific response in the business to, let's just call it high-end surround sound audio, because a major partner has indicated that that is a priority for them. And so it has become a thing, but it's also going to become a thing in gaming. It's also going to become a thing in the movie industry. And the auto industry is also embracing that same standard. So not only does it create demand on the consumer side, and the in-home speakers are utilizing that same platform, but it's ubiquitous across entertainment. And I think that's where, then larger companies feel comfortable about spending the money on the catalog to transform it, but also very important, for the industry to embrace how to deliver this said content and apply the focus to what that's going to mean. Are we still playing around with how we're going to deliver and store stems? Yeah. Are they going to be a derivative ISRC code? Do we know that? Have we determined that yet? No. But is there something in the consumer marketplace that's indicated such a huge groundswell for stems in the same way that the high-res audio has been gravitated to, for example? I'm thinking that there are other, the other interesting things are even on the subtle things like motion album art at some of the various higher end DSPs. That was an initiative where people like it. It creates another enhanced visual experience for the user, and it's been rolled out ubiquitously across a major DSP, who, two major DSPs, I should say. And now that is kind of a requirement in the litany of things that one has to deliver. Now, that's not systematized yet, right?
No,
Only the static art is part of the current delivery spec. So these are also things that then have to go off grid and be side loaded into different systems. The other thing that I look at, and you can make a comment here, is lyrics. Well, technically the provenance of the publishing companies, there are various companies who have licenses to do this, but they don't get everything in for 100% of the releases, especially for indie catalog, all the time, especially before Street Day. So how do you deliver to these lyric companies, and then how you do deliver in the correct format? Because there is no dot, DX for lyrics.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're
all the metadata that you need. Yeah,
I'm glad you're bringing up things like the Apple lossless and Apple surround. There are companies like MQA who've been out there with a sounding board saying, the 3D audio is here. But until an Apple or a Spotify or any major DSP said, we're now taking this, we're now doing this, and they set the standard, this is our partner Dolby, this is what we're doing, the industry did not really react until then. And then all of a sudden, as we saw and you saw and everyone else, there's been a mad scramble to remaster, a mad scramble to kind of reproduce all the things that now Apple is able to surface. And we saw this with Spotify and credits as well, when they started to expand songwriter credits. That was great, but it wasn't until those exposures did the labels and publishers really not wake up and do the work that's needed. And I think that this is indicative of our industry. It is led by the retailers. It's led by those who are closest to the fans, closest to the consumer, and we want to elevate that relationship. We need them to be the bigger drivers of demand from our industry, and they make us work for it, right? When DSP said we will no longer take any piece of content without an ISRC, everyone scrambled and made it happen. We made it happen, and every system was modified and updated to include it. The same needs to happen for this other critical data set, whether it's lyrics, whether it's high-res audio. Those need to be dictated by DSPs, and we need to work closer with those groups. Now, getting content, side loads don't scare me as much as they should, because side loads, to me, that means that someone's clamoring for this data. Side loads means that someone doesn't yet have a front door built out, but they want this information to make it surfaced, right?
I have one thing to say though.
Yeah.
Also, don't run a cranky operations team of people who have to
don't get me wrong. It's not pleasant for operations teams anywhere. But I would say that if there is already sideloads happening, that means that at least the data has value. I'm much more concerned about all this technology being built, all this housing built to store information that nobody yet wants or yet nobody needs. So you can build the best front door, you can build the best delivery system, but if someone isn't wanting your data, if the market doesn't want it, you're going to have a lot of people who build stuff that just don't need this information. And that's much worse, in my opinion. I'd rather see a slew of side loading, proving a business, proving a need, and then front doors are built properly. And I think, I have colleagues who have built all this Mead infrastructure. I have colleagues that have built all this RIN infrastructure, which is awesome and necessary, but we need DSPs to help drive their adoption. We need DSPs to say loudly, we will take this data, we will use this data, this is how we'll use it, this is what we'll do with it, and this is what you're going to get back from a reporting perspective so that we can fix the communication gap between DSPs and rights holders.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at something like the contextual metadata, there was I saw something flashed in the chat regarding, companies that are kind of destinations for contextual metadata. They still need customers to survive, right? And the adaptation of accepting contextual metadata or photographs or images directly from the labels or through a clearinghouse, either way, it still requires demand at the end of the last mile. The problem that we're facing right now is there is no demand at the end of the last mile for this information, even though I would postulate that, and I think Edward, you would too, that there is demand for more ways to search catalog, right? To be able to dive in.
I think the demand is actually healthily there. I think the exposure to that demand is from those apps that consumers use to find things, or their voice ecosystems to ask for things. But again, I've always been a big fan of this being a two-way street. If we're tagging things, we also need to know what value those tags have in front of consumers. Meaning, how did the consumer ask for this information? What was the search terms that were used to have found my music? Why isn't that when I get my reporting back about performance, I'm not also being exposed to how they found this music? Because that might help me promote, position things better tag things. I will have a much better understanding than whether or not I have more revenue or less revenue if I actually added more context to this information.
Just one note for the audience: if you have questions, put them in the Q&A tab. Don't put them in the chat.
Yeah.
With respect to your vision on kind of the way data should be, it's an old expression, but I actually like it the best: data portability, right? It's kind of a 1999 way of talking about it, but it's still very,
well, it's still relevant. It's still
germane.
Yeah, look, when I entered this space, it was a bunch of silos. We currently live in a world where it's just a bunch of silos of data. The problem we have is that these silos were for a long time thought of as competitive advantages. I have this data, you don't have this data. I'm holding on to it because it's my competitive advantage somehow, somewhere. What I believe in, and I think you do as well, is if you're going to build a silo, immediately build an API, build a front door to it, make it so that that silo is accessible. It's available to other silos that potentially need this information. Because otherwise, what we're seeing is an industry full of just siloed mess that when one thing changes, everything else stays the same. And now you no longer know what's true, what's not. And I don't care how many programmatic cleanup companies pop up, you're never going to be able to stop the bleeding if we don't start making silos open to one another. Again, this is information that should not be competitive. If your data sits on Spotify, please don't call it competitive advantage anymore, because it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on Deezer, it's on hundreds of other global platforms. All we need it to be is right. We want it to be updatable in an easy way so that as ownership changes, as rights holders are found, that gets updated easily. And the only way that this gets better is when our silos communicate with one another, that the APIs are immediately the second thought when I'm building a system. So, we at OpenPlay have always wanted open architecture. We wanted open communication. DDEX is a standard, but we also support our JSON APIs. We support our flat files that we work with. It really, it's up to the business to implement the technologies that are right for them. But whatever the technology you choose to implement, please make sure it's interoperable, that it's available to others. It's only going to serve you better if your platforms that you use, where your data is accessible, is available. So ask anyone who stores your data, can I access it by API? Can I pull down my DDEX at a moment's notice? Can I get my whole catalog exported? Can I do it myself? If the answers are no to any of those, you're not really in an open ecosystem. And this is where we need to make sure our industry stops focusing on what's competitive and what's not when it comes to metadata.
Right. So so what you're saying is the advantage of OpenPlay is the fact that at any point you can pull down a full set or subset of DDEX deliverable data, a CSV, or any of that stuff to make your data truly portable, or provide an API key to somebody who'll be able to use some of your data and then potentially some of your assets in whatever you assign to them and give them permission to use, right?
No, I mean, can you imagine a world in the financial world where every time you switched accountants, you have to learn a whole new system or deliver your financial data in a way that no one's yet seen before? It will be an absolute mess. And then that's kind of what our landscape has been, is that everyone we talk to, everyone we do business with has a different flavor or take, even though end of the day, just like with financial data, it all looks the same on the other end. So we want to make sure that those who are building tools and systems like OpenPlay, that the operability and connectedness is number one on their list of things that they build out first. And if you are bespoke and you are focusing on bespoke systems inside your company, think about where your technical resources are going into, because there is a lot of competitive advantage that we have in our space. We have all this AI work that's being done. We have got all this programmatic tagging and exploitations that are yet to be still even fully understood in front of us. Those are the vectors that I think every company should be looking at in putting their dollars at play, not every time Apple has a new validation for the title to now no longer have the word CD in it. 300 engineers should not be spinning up across the world to make that change. That's just asinine. So let's reduce the amount of systems that are in play that are bespoke and in walls, and focus on really what matters, which is how do we get discovery to be more pronounced? How do we get consumers to pay more for music than they do today? How do we get our DSPs to work with us on these new technologies, as opposed to the most commodity of it all, which is your title and artist and genre landing at their doorsteps?
And that really kind of draws to the commoditization of distribution kind of question, right? To put a fine point on it, delivery systems are not should no longer be considered competitive elements in the business, right? And what you just said with respect to like looking and then diving into AR and the true differentials between a business is what's really, really important. So as we talk about kind of, the bigger picture, let's kind of take a step down into some more detail and talk a little bit about sort of, the tool set, and, talking about, your approach to asset management. You can also talk a little bit probably about how, the sharing of data with respect to, your sort of vision on, with OpenPlay as an open network first, and then diving into some of the more specific tools that you have.
So with OpenPlay, when we first built this concept, I was in the walls of Concord, which is one of the more unicorn magical labels out there, that has grown from a small jazz label in Concord, California, to the powerhouse of acquisition vehicles that they are today. And a lot of that gave us the latitude to build kind of what labels needed and also publishers needed to be able to manage the core assets themselves, which is what is it that I own, where does it sit, and where does it live, what are my rights, and how quickly can I exploit it when I need to exploit it. Those are the answers that we wanted to solve first when we built the early versions of OpenPlay. And what we learned from all of this was, now that we have this kind of center of truth, the real tool set that needed for labels to operate their day-to-day was everything surrounding that data. How do I playlist it out in a way that's secure? How do I use my marketing materials, whether it's photos and documents that I have sitting in 4 different systems? How do I bring those together, contextualized with my music? How do I make sure that no one goes anywhere but one place to download music when they need to listen to it, as opposed to 3 different libraries that they have in their organization? And also then exploitation of that, whether it's what we've rolled out with our EPKs, which are our electronic press kits, where we strongly believe that historically the 1% of the top artists got a website dedicated to them and their content specifically for the purpose of exploitation. We wanted to bring that to every piece of artist and content inside of the actual infrastructure. So to me, tools are everything that's surrounding the commodity that is metadata. And this is where, OpenPlay and other groups like OpenPlay, this is where we should be hanging our hats, is focusing on how do we bring the best tools that our labels can operate their business on, or our distributors can, focus on what they do best, which is promotions and positioning, and get the technological friction out of the equation as much as possible. We've had the saying for a long time at OpenPlay, which is, make music, not metadata. That was really just a refocus, that those who aren't waking up every day focusing on solving a problem should focus on the problem that they are actually waking up to solve, right? We here at OpenPlay every day, every person in our company is all around making lives of labels, distributors, and publishers easier, right? And that's all we focus on are those tools. We don't focus on making music. We don't focus on promoting music. We don't focus on a lot of things that many are doing and also thinking about the problems we're trying to solve. So it's really all about just focus and staying in the areas that you can best dominate in.
So, dive a little bit deeper into specifics on, say, for example, your digital asset management tool and for marketing. One of the things that I think is very helpful is being able to a lot of labels, especially smaller indies, not necessarily, is really being able to sort and sift through current logos, current photos, current bios, and getting information at fingertips and having it made available to whatever teams that need it without waiting for somebody to go back to their desk and send a file that's sitting on their proprietary hard drive, right? That's the advantage of a DAM system, a digital asset management system. Talk about the DAM system within OpenPlay, how you've seen it used by clients, and what you think might be helpful for labels to know and understand right now.
Well, first and foremost, if you have a DAM system in your organization or any asset management system in your organization, your entire team, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, should have access to the music that you guys are making at any time of the day or night, meaning that whether they can listen to it, whether they can share it, all that is obviously part of the permissions that person might have. But from the ability to do so, if you work in a music company, you should be able to listen to the music that you guys produce. And a lot of music labels that we work with and talk to for the first time, they don't have those capabilities. They have a few people that have access to a distribution system that might be able to pull down some of their music. But the majority of the organization still keeps iTunes libraries. They still keep, their own Spotify playlists of their own music, which is crazy to us that you have to go to a commercial tool like Spotify to be able to listen to your own music. And back in the day, as you recall, I'm sure there was a guy walking around and giving out CDs as promos to every person in the organization. Those days are long gone, right? So no more promos means you might actually not even know you're working at a music company. It's kind of scary. You could be working on a car parts factory and not even really know. So a digital asset management system is all about making things available to everyone in the organization. And that starts with music, but then it's everything else. It's which photo am I allowed to use? Is this the latest photo? Is it approved? Is this box folder that says photos, is it good for me to use or not? These are questions that when labels first come to OpenPlay for the first time, they do this cleanup of, what do I own? What do I have the ability to exploit? And what this does is now anyone using that system is able to trust that what's there is correct, that they know that they can use it without any legal harm potentially of exploitation. And this is a big part of any good asset management system is it's yours to control, it's yours to direct. If you want to direct this content to a new provider tomorrow, you should be able to do so yourself as the rights holder, not having to wait months for someone else to kind of do that for you or hope that they do that for you. It's your content. So use it as though it was your bank account. You can initiate a wire without asking your bank manager to do it for you and hope that they actually do it and not say no. You should feel the same way about your music.
So that's kind of the brings together all the different tool sets and a little bit more on the kind of data sharing aspect of things. As you look at what OpenPlay could provide over the next 5 years, right? What you're looking at over kind of how you see the evolution of what the product will be. What, you know, this is kind of a little bit of a blue sky thing because obviously things aren't available today. But where do you want to see the product go over the course of the next several years, right? You said you were focusing more on the differentials than the core, but then there's also core things to focus on, like delivery of stems and delivery, and smoothing out the deliveries with respect to the sort of high res deliveries, and multiple copies of high res that are required under, it's a different world now with all these different kind of component parts that make up the whole, right?
Yeah, so great question. So where we're focused on where we're headed. So there's the underlying core master data elements, things like stems or session management. All those things are core to OpenPlay, and our continued evolution as it gets more into publishing, more into neighboring rights, more into all the areas that we as a master data system have to store this content. That's where we come in as OpenPlay. But what we are not going to do is build all things for all people, right? The evolution of OpenPlay is one that includes a marketplace of apps that are available on top of OpenPlay, partner networks with third parties that are leveraging OpenPlay data. And there's some great platforms out there that we're already working to interface with, whether it's a chart metric or a curve systems or a lyric find. All those tools and systems we don't want to replicate, nor should any one company replicate any of those. Again, it comes back to when you wake up in the morning, what do you focus on? And if that's your core business, that should be a core business, whether it's lyrics, whether it's charting, whether it's Viva Sound and their audio review and mastering. All of those elements are what we want to enable at OpenPlay to be able to interface with. We want a healthy ecosystem where someone who is doing business with someone else can easily point their content that's needed for that party out of OpenPlay without ever having to do another manual data exchange, without ever having to go through the odorous exercise of show me what you have, we'll show you what we have, and we'll spend 4 or 5 months figuring out how it connects. These are the areas that we want to evolve OpenPlay into. And a lot of that stems from a lot of the work that we're doing now, which is foundational aspects of storing the right information. And we'll focus on evolving OpenPlay to store the latest STEM data, the latest RIM data, the latest MEAD data. Even though it's not yet potentially marketable or commercializable, what we want is the housing to be available so that when it is ready, that all these groups that need it, that want it, can easily pull it from OpenPlay, can easily come in and never have to, go through a complicated connectivity exercise again when they're dealing with their own data.
Well, that's one of the big things that is interesting to run into as you talk to different record companies and you talk to different operational folks all over the place, is that the retrofitting of a catalog. Like, it's all well and good to say on this date moving forward, we're going to deliver X, Y, and Z. The problem is then you have this sort of, it feels like the end of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where they open it up and they put the Ark of the Covenant in this giant warehouse where there's everything there. And how do you hope to catalog and how do you hope to deal with that? That's the biggest problem right now, is saying, if the industry is evolving that quickly, how do you get back catalog up to snuff in order to do battle with the front line? And how do you make it competitive against other catalogs? Because obviously catalog revenue, ding, 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 the driver of decision-making, right, in a lot of areas, or revenue, period, is very, it's very important, so how do
Yeah,
we
well, so first of all, our industry is full of hundreds of those warehouses, as opposed to just one, which I think makes that even more complex. And every one of those warehouses has their own shelving system that needs to be figured out. But what we are focused on, and what I think the industry needs to focus on when it comes to cleanup, is making sure your data, your content, let's say you just bought a catalog, is to park it somewhere where you can chip away at it. Because end of the day, what ends up happening is you're going to sort it in many different ways based on what's bringing revenue, what's not. And your cleanup, as you know very well, is going to be very pointed to the things that are the most relevant to the least relevant. And it all comes down to making sure your data is at least in one place, so that when you do make these chips at cleanup, that you only make them once, that they can be propagated everywhere from that one single source, and you're not having your teams go into 4 different platforms to make the same modification, because they will inevitably get it wrong, no matter how good they are. And that there are tools being built, like at OpenPlay, we're really focused on bulk tools at the moment, is to be able to make cleanup in bulk easy and possible, so that when, if you're a Christian genre label, you don't need to touch 2,000 records to apply a Christian genre type to your label, to your content. You should be able to do these things with bulk tools that are available to you. But the important thing is that you're doing it in a place where you control that data, that you can pull it down, even though if you leave that platform tomorrow, the data is still yours. Because the worst thing that you can end up with is all this cleanup effort in a place where you can't get it back. Because we've been there, you've been there. It is a nightmare, because end of the day, it's your effort, it's your staff, it's your team. Where you put those value vectors, that's really what you don't want to lose.
It's the surprising roach motel model that a lot of people aren't even aware of until the end of their deals, which is, all right, cool, I uploaded all this stuff, can I get my data back? And people are just like, no.
Well, it's again, I reference this a lot.
It's like, it's your data, but did you enter it in your own systems? No, you entered it in our systems, and now you're no longer a customer. Bye-bye.
It's like going to an ATM machine and realizing that the withdrawal button doesn't work, right? You've been depositing. You've never withdrawn. You never needed to withdraw money. And now all of a sudden you want your money back, and that button just doesn't work. I mean, this is unfortunately still a product we deal with now, less and less, luckily, but it's still a mantra in our industry that it's hard to shake. And switching costs are real. Switching costs are real. They shouldn't be as real as they are now, right? You should be able to switch any relationships anywhere, because that gives you the most flexibility. But if you can't get something back, you might realize, I'm going to stay where I am, because I'm just I don't have the effort now to fight for this. I have 3 other initiatives on my docket. I'm not going to do this because, I just don't have the stamina to do it. Should never be a reason not to, to put your data where it needs to be.
So we've talked exclusively about the master side of the business, right? We have not talked about works or publishing.
Yeah.
Just how deep does OpenPlay get into works? And then with respect to your understanding of kind of like where you sit in the publishing sort of landscape, because there are obviously other software solutions that deal with that, there's certainly a different delivery standard for publishing information that people don't seem to update anywhere near as frequently, but it's also hasn't been mandated by the industry. So talk a little bit about kind of where you sit in the publishing arena.
Well, look, OpenPlay has been from the ground up built with a publishing component in mind. We architected OpenPlay with a UPC, a recording, and a work composition to work in harmony. We've long believed that even though you're a recorded label, you still want to keep your publishing as close to what it should be as possible. Now that's not always the case, because information is not always easily exchanged. But we've been enhancing and improving OpenPlay from a publishing perspective almost every year since we've launched. With a lot more coming in terms of our enterprise tool set. And there are a number of players that we like out there in the space for publishing, but they're really focused on just publishing. And I think our view is the industry is changing, where it's no longer just publishing. There's always some recorded music aspect, or better yet, publishers should be equally aware of the exploitations of their recorded music in an easier way than it is today. They should not be surprised by music in the marketplace, and that's how they learn about something. So we are expanding OpenPlay to deal with CWR and other formats that are more relevant in the publishing space. We already have a pretty good referential connection between works and recordings. We only want to expand on that so that as conflicts arise, we're interfacing with Sound Exchange and other societies that are dealing with conflict matches. We're looking at companies like Orpheum who are doing great things when it comes to being able to find revenues connected to recordings and publishing. We want to expand the data that we're collecting and make it easier for those third parties to do what they do, right? We want more money to be collected out in the market, and the only way that happens is by better data when it comes to connectedness between compositions and recordings. So we're going to continue to expand our publisher tool set. We're going to have an offering that will be mostly focused on just publishing very near term. Our focus is on enterprise and mid-sized and eventually smaller publishers, but we're going to take the same approach that we've taken with the label space, which is slow, methodical growth, making sure that we're building things that are needed and not just for the sake of, we have more fields than you do. And we're going to expand our offering that hopefully publishers are going to find a lot of value to come onto OpenPlay, even if they have no recorded works, where they just have compositions, because eventually we want their visibility of the compositions that are being exploited in the market to be visible in OpenPlay. We want OpenPlay to be the kind of the central dashboard of where any rights holder can see what's happening with the performance of their work.
Cool. And interestingly enough, we've hit the 10 minutes to the end mark.
Okay.
Where we can start addressing some of the questions that are in there. So first question from Paul Buono is OpenPlay able to accept and deliver enhanced hi-fi audio and surround sound audio files?
We do, and we can, and this falls into the category of what we wake up and think about, which is how do we house the data and the content assets as well that are needed by our customers, surround and 3D audio. It's all of that is necessary to be on the forefront of. We're blessed that we work with some of the largest music companies in the world who tend to push us early in those directions, and we welcome that because that's how we are able to bring this experience to independent labels faster, is that we build this out for the bleeding edge, and then we make it available to everyone else.
Cool. Christian says, what are the advantages of using OpenPlay as a CMS or even as a distributor over standard delivery systems? I'm going to take a poke a little bit on that side because I see, OpenPlay, there's depending on the size of your label, you probably have certain departments in certain areas that can take care of certain promotional functions that are necessary at the DSP level. So there are certain things that can be done with sort of a direct delivery partner versus a distributor. But Edward, please elaborate.
Look, we love our distribution relationships. We love our customers who are distributors because the end of the day, the concept of distribution is different than it was a decade or more ago, right? Right now, it's less about getting your content into a store than it is to help you promote that content, help you make it more accessible, give you guidance on A&R decisions, on artist signings. This is where distributors, the modern distributors that we work with, are exceptional at. Whether you're a Virgin or an ADA or a Monarch or a Secretly, your value vector is positioning your artists and your content as best as possible in the market. We are not that, and we're the first to loudly scream that from the rooftops. We are focused on the delivery aspect of things, where the commodity of getting an asset from point A to point B, let us take care of that. Everything else, your distributor should be helping you focus on. And again, if your only value from a distributor is at point A to point B, that's the decision that you need to be thinking about. Where is that value vector? But every good distribution partner we work with now has long pivoted their focus to the services side of the business, the areas that they can help you level up your revenue, level up your artists. Those are the areas that again, you should be asking your distributors for the most of the help in, as opposed to how do I get my stuff on Spotify?
I find that interesting because a lot of people always talk about artist services as this thing, but what they really mean is we'll give you a dashboard as a trebuchet to send your stuff into a DSP, and we're not going to help you market. We're not going to help position you. We're not going to help do any of these other things. We're literally just placing you in exchange for either a flat fee or an exorbitant distribution fee. But they don't necessarily do anything with respect to what I know that my company feels is that, hands-on and being able to get those features and being able to get that positioning with the DSPs and being able to talk through programs is very, very important. And, that's the advantage of us being able to leverage a system like OpenPlay, where we can focus on our core competency, whereas other companies are busy being distracted by their own proprietary problems. That's a strategic advantage for us.
And you want to be mired with the right proprietary problems, as you guys, as well as the other distributors like Universal and Warner that we work with, they're building really awesome tools that are helping discovery happen, helping their labels get positioned in playlists better than anyone else. Those tools need to be built by companies like yourself. That is exactly where your dollars and your resources should be going. And the best companies we work with, they know that. They know that their focus is limited on tech, and they can only focus on the things that matter. And what we want to matter are the ancillary new things that are necessary, not commodity-based delivery.
Another question. Okay, quickly, how do you create demand and utility for data that consumers, other parties are not even aware of? I think this pertains to kind of some of the things that could be that we talked about, but necessarily consumers aren't necessarily using. I think this question popped up right around then. Sometimes the service needs to exist first before the demand exists. I would say that there are probably ways for DSPs to investigate what people are looking at. For example, it's very clear that, while, you can't integrate social data and social feeds, various platforms are now starting to integrate social type TikTok-y type of fields into their service, right? When you look at what some new announcement from Spotify is, you're talking about those short form video loops. They come with certain constraints, but they're looking at the outside market and saying, hey, these little quick tidbitty pieces of video are going to be important, to our viewers, because clearly there's a groundswell around short form video. And so they've attacked that in that particular way. So there are obviously ways to do it before you build it and try it, to experiment, at least from my perspective. Edward, do you want to?
Yeah, look, I agree. I think this industry has consistently suffered from a chicken and egg problem with almost every new adventure. But what we have consistently learned is that the retailer, the DSP, is the closest driver we have to demand. And yes, a service might need to be first prominently made available before that demand is generated, but it's really up to those services that are popping up to go to the rights holders and make it known to them why they want this additional data. They should make it known to them how they're going to exploit this data. They should make it known to them how they're going to monetize this data. Because end of the day, every cleanup, every data adventure that rights holders take has a cost to it, has time connected to it. So it really is up to the services, whether they're brand new or they've been entrenched for years, to continually moving this industry forward by explaining to rights holders at music bigs conferences, at A2IM events, at every possible event that they can about what it is that they're doing to enhance the consumer experience and what they need now from those rights holders to make that experience even better. It really is them being the drivers here, and we are all listening, right? Anytime a Spotify or an Apple or a Deezer or someone of that size speaks, we all listen because that's what's next, and we want to help power that.
Do you see standards for lyrics happening soon? This is a question from Vinny.
Absolutely, and they already are. And, lyrics have become more and more expanded. Now more DSPs are taking them. Companies like Lyric Find have been doing phenomenal work in making lyrics a thing that they are today. And I think we're only going to see more exploitation of lyrics.
Yeah, I can say that obviously the demand for lyrics has expanded, especially over the last 2 years, in different formats. And yes, it is, let's say it's somewhat of an operational quagmire, especially because technically we're not the publisher. We can only supply lyrics as used by permission for in certain contexts, and we can deliver them upstream to partners. But ultimately, for companies that do the work, sometimes in entering it, we get no, there's no compensation, which is interesting. But we also want to have the lyrics there to be competitive. So there's rock meet hard place in that discussion. So hopefully,
while lyrics are searchable, as long as the services make lyrics searchable and they can help find the actual audio that you do monetize, there's value there, right? So if nothing else, if someone has a lyric in mind and they want to search for it, let that be a great way to find what they're going to be playing.
Right. I mean, for me, it's the I know the conundrum is always kind of like the time suck of it's the time suck of all the different timings, whether it be line by line or the dreaded karaoke timing.
Yeah,
because that can also bog down a team. Can you tell I'm afraid of my staff that they're going to come to my
house? But you know what? I think this is where ChatGPT needs to solve things, right? The AI is far better at like synchronizing timing to lyrics than we will ever be, and the tools just need. That's where tools need to evolve, right? Where we just need easier tools where we drop in lyrics and it does a lot of the time sync on our behalf.
Right. Yeah, and that's what the good aspects of AI impact on the music business. I'm not the jury's out on the fake Drake. Right.
Hey, look, that's a whole topic in of itself, but I think we're scratching the infancy of all the programmatic AI-based artists that we're going to see in the market. In fact, I think if we're looking at 100,000 tracks per day coming into the market, we're about to see that 5x with all the AI knockoffs that are coming.
We have one final question. So anybody who has another question, lay it on us because we are at time. But I'm going to say, can OpenPlay provide an intuitive link between genre codes and legacy systems? I guess, is there a bridge between existing data to make it relevant? And one unfortunate thing is that all the different DSPs use kind of different genre settings. Some are more of the Wild West. Some are very strict in the lists of what they have. And so it's not like you saying you're going to use ISO country code, USA for the United States of America. There's a lot of whimsy
this is where it comes to controlling your own data. So at OpenPlay, when it comes to roles, genres, and configurations, we've made them completely manageable by the rights holder in the platform, meaning they can decide this is my genre, but when it goes to Spotify, I want it to look like this. this is my genre or my role for this artist, but when it goes to Deezer, I want this to map into this. We built that into OpenPlay so that it's one source of truth with any type of mappings that you want to maintain to those individual parties that are specific in their needs. It's one of the bigger headaches of dealing with DDEX is that there is no internal mapping. So oftentimes that's some of the friction we deal with, is dealing with data of different genres, different artist roles, different configurations. We built mapping tools that the rights holder needs to map once. And anytime they have a new relationship with a third party, they can decide to use an existing mapping of roles and genres or make a custom one specifically for that partner that they're dealing with. No one else needs to be involved. It's a discussion between you and whichever party is going to be exploiting your music.
Cool. All right. Well, 302, we've answered all the questions. We've been through the presentation. Edward, is there anything else that you'd like to maybe give some contact information for people who are interested in hearing more about OpenPlay or something?
Yeah, I mean, look, we'd love to see you guys all at Music Biz, where my entire team will be there with anyone that has any questions. We've got a number of awesome panels. You guys should also attend. And you can always find us at openplay.co. Yeah, we'd love to help continue to expand our vision for a tool set that will help labels, publishers, distributors focus on what matters, which is the music and the fan.
All righty then. So I guess we're done. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Edward, Bill, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise with us. We're grateful to have you here. And thank you for everyone for attending today. Looking forward to welcoming you to the next webinar or event. Take care and talk soon.
Thank you.